And Ezra. We're back. Part 5, and it is the final part of Ezra. How nice and lovely is it to have these great short books as a lot of our larger books. And I will tell you, this does wrap up remember we were doing our segment of 5 books. Okay, this wraps up our next segment of 5. I want to say this is the 15th book. Oh goodness. Let me take a look real quick. It makes sense that it's the 15th. It doesn't feel like we've gone as far as the 20th. Alright, covered. Yes, Ezra is the 15th book. So not only is this the last section of Ezra, this is the last section, the 15th book of the Bible, where we can kind of summarize, bring our culminating thoughts together on these last 5 books as well. So we have Chronicles, first and second book of Kings, and then Ezra would be the last. So with this, I hope you can just remember collectively right now what we've talked about for all of those books and what this is about, what they were about, okay? Because Ezra really kind of ties it all together into the one main message, which we really did cover in our introduction video in the Quran. Focus on one, okay? Worship one God. Worship one God. Do not confuse yourselves. Do not disgrace him or offend him with the worship and the convoluting of his word. Make it seem like you're looking to anyone else. Don't make it seem like you're looking to anyone else. So we're going to talk about that, and that's really the main message over everything. Yes, we have our kings. We have the rise and fall of power many, many, many times, only due to the little mistakes that these great kings of Israel and Judah, right? They were worshiping the Asherah poles. They were worshiping Baal. They were doing all of these things that led them rise and fall, right? It's just a matter of how close and how near you are to him versus how far away. Okay, really, no, we don't want to look at inherent good or bad, but when you think about it, moving farther and farther away from our God, our Creator, it can't be good, right? It just can't be good. It's never ends up well. So that's just really the most prevalent message within these past 5 books, and we will, of course, be touching on this today in this last little section here. Before we jump in, we're going to go ahead and read out our quote. Prosperity is a blessing of the Old Testament. Adversity is a blessing of the New. Okay, so we do have here this vision of prosperity in the Old Testament, despite all the drama, despite all the pitfalls. Okay, there is a lot of prosperity happening. Okay, we talk about all the great kings, we talk about all the sons and the children that people had. And if you do think of the Quran in this sense, right, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have it made and you're saved, you're good, you don't have to deal with any problems, you won't be questioned or asked about your way of life, okay? Prosperity is a great thing, and it is a blessing. We just have to treat it as such, and we just have to have the gratitude and the recognition that yes, this is a blessing, and who bestowed that upon who bestowed it upon us for us to be prosperous and for us to be blessed. That is really a good, important message. And then it also says here, adversity is a blessing of the new. So we have not entered the New Testament, but we are creeping right along. We're getting right up to it here. We do have several long, good books. Some of my favorite books are coming up here in our wisdom literature section. But we do have many good books coming. We have some major prophets that we need to talk about. And then we get into the New Testament, which is really culminated of the gospel, Paul's letters, and then we have the Revelations and things like that. So we have a lot to go, okay, but we really are making very, very good headway. This is really nearing the end of the Old Testament narrative, and then we're getting more into the esoterical realm of the Bible pretty soon here. So I'm excited for that. And then, of course, adversity, right? Because it talks about, when we get into the esoterics, it's really the root of, like, they were talking about roots of suffering and how to combat suffering. And we're talking about lusts, right? Things like that, and the beauty behind those things and what makes them beautiful instead of, sad or brutal. We're not going to talk about that too much, but that will be just a little glimpse of what we have coming to us as we finish this 15th book of the Bible today. We've had some long ones, so even though 15 doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, there's been some very long portions that we've covered. Like I said, it's pretty much a third of the Bible when you're not thinking about it in books. Yes, there's 66 or so books in the Bible, minus the Apocrypha. But we're like a good third of the way done, actually, with the written text. So we should be very proud of ourselves. Such a great day to go ahead and recognize this accomplishment. Okay, let's just go ahead and begin, right? We talk about prosperity, who it is attributed to, who we thank for our prosperity, and let's move on. We talked a little bit about weird vibes ending in Ezra part 4. We talked about Ezra coming in and him noticing some things is a little off. Some things are a little bit off. And I do have to go into some personal time to go over this with you. So just allow me 1 second. All right. Let us begin. Falling apart over here. Oh, you see my little angel over here. Speaking of angels. All right, starting out with chapter 9. After these things had been done. And when we say these things, we're talking about the sacrifices, the Passover, right? The sin offerings. After those things have been done, the leaders came to me. And again, to refresh, we're talking about in Ezra's point of view, okay? With Ezra's point of view. The leaders came to me and said, "The people of Israel, including the priests and the Levites, have not kept themselves separate from the neighboring peoples with their detestable practices, like those of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, Egyptians, and Amorites." Right? Named out for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Interesting, right? Because we're talking about that, the issues, right? Okay. They had taken some of their daughters as wives for themselves and their sons, and have mingled the holy race with the peoples around them. And the leaders and officials have led the way in this unfaithfulness. We're going to pause, right? Because there's a lot of perceptions about this section here and other parts of the New Testament, especially using this term holy race, okay? A lot of this gives power to racism and things like that, right? But this is not what we're looking at. We're talking about the practices of the people, okay? We're not talking about because they were foreigners or outsiders or because they look different than us, because in all reality they did not look that different from the Israelites and the Israelites. They did not look that different. It was their practices, okay? We talked about this. They are monotheistic. They were inviting in other things, not just our God. They were inviting in those things that we were talking about in the last video. They were causing confusion. Not only that, it caused jealousy, okay? You wonder why we had problems as Israelites. We had problems with the Moabites. We wondered why we were constantly going into battles with the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Egyptians, everybody. We were constantly getting into scuffles because it actually caused jealousy among the people that, this great, powerful, strong the Israelites were building up this reputation, and their wives were coming on over. But a lot of them did not leave their practices, even though they were coming on over to mate and mingle and have children with these Israelites. They didn't leave their practices, so it introduced Israel to these practices. And as we know, and as we've been reading, that's been a problem time and time again. It comes up, and then it comes back down, and it arises again, and it goes back down with the generations. So again, don't think of this as, a race issue, but people still use this today also to say, I want my son or daughter as a Christian, marrying a Christian. I want my son and daughter as a Muslim, marrying a Muslim. Same with Jewish. I have my son and daughter in the Jewish faith. I want them to marry within the Jewish faith. So it's very, very, it's not old, okay? It's not old, and it's something that still happens today. And there's pros and cons to that as well. There's pros and cons. It was a bigger issue, okay? The polytheism was a bigger issue just because God wanted to establish himself. He wanted to establish himself within the minds of this people. He wanted to focus on this people as the carrying out of his legacy. So he did that, okay? He did that successfully. He's done that successfully, and it worked despite all the issues. I'm rambling a lot. I apologize, you guys. But I have more to this. There's more to this. He establishes, and the offense from the Lord, where the offense comes in, is because he's taken time to communicate through his prophets, through angels, through signs, and people are mistaking that with something else. They're mistaking that he's taken the time to communicate. He's taken the time to appear to people when everything else has been muddled in mythology, okay? Off of speculation, off of sensing the veil behind the curtain, when he has provided clear proofs, events, okay, big sign. We've read this all throughout the Old Testament. So that's where the offense comes in. He's like, still, after I've shown myself, after you've heard my voice, after I've spoken my word and written down laws for you, you still want to confuse yourself. So that's where the offense comes in, and this is the crucial part of Jewish law and Islam. Is to A, submit for Islam, B, is to really stay true to those laws that he provided. And one of those laws is, at this time especially, do not mingle, right? Do not mingle with people who do not believe the same thing as you. You want to be on the same page. You really do, because it's going to lead you to prosperity, okay? Prosperity provided by God when you guys are on the same page. So when Ezra heard that this was happening among the holy race, right? Among the peoples, I shouldn't even say that, because yes, but among the peoples, he was upset, okay? He tore his tunic and cloak. He pulled hair from his head and beard, and I sat down appalled. Then, at the evening sacrifice, I rose from my self-abasement with my tunic and cloak torn. I fell on my knees with my hands spread out to the Lord my God and prayed. From the days of our ancestors until now, our guilt has been great because of our sins. We and our kings and our priests have been subjected to the sword and captivity, to pillage and humiliation at the hands of foreign kings, as it is today. So he's praying and he's speaking about his people, right? The people. A proclamation was then issued throughout Judah and Jerusalem for all the exiles to assemble in Jerusalem. Any who failed to appear within 3 days would forfeit all his property in accordance with the decision of the officials and elders, and would himself be expelled from the assembly of exiles. Would you look at that? All right. How to be an exile and then also expelled from the assembly of exiles. okay? That just seems like it's a bit much. All right, but they didn't want to cast a harsh punishment or a harsh blame on these individuals. Okay, we know love is love, human nature is human nature. People are going to mix, they're going to mingle. That is just how it is. So there was no killing, okay? There was no killing. They were just going to separate. Okay, you want to follow these ways. You want to go on different paths. Because you know how women are. They can be persuasive in this sense. They can be persuasive, so can men, okay? So they're like, okay, if you want to follow these practices, just do it away from us. We need to stay true. We need to stay committed to our God. So that is what happened. So the exiles did as was proposed. Ezra the priest selected men who were family heads, one from each family division, and all of them designated by name. On the first day of the 10th month, they sat down to investigate the cases, and by the day of the first month, they had finished dealing with all the men who had married foreign women. Okay, and again, the use of foreign is, broad and general. We know what we're talking about. We're talking about the practices. Anyways, and among the other Israelites, from the descendants, this is here, among the descendants of the priests, the following had married foreign women. So it wasn't only just the people, right? This was the priest. This was the head, the leaders of the faith. So how would it look for the leaders of the faith to be, mixing and mingling? And in some cases, they were converting, okay? In some cases, they were converting people into the faith of the Lord. And it was a positive thing. So that's why there was not any harsh punishment. Sometimes it wasn't all, mixy-mixy. But because of everything that's happened in the past and how it actually did become that everything was mixy-mixy, the Asherah poles in Judah, the Baal altars, the child sacrifice that happened in Israel, in Judah. So because that has happened before, they did not want that to happen again. They just rebuilt the temple. They're just starting to reestablish themselves. God is allowing them to be reestablished, bringing wealth to them, and then they want to go up and start this whole cycle over again. Just comical. When I was reading this, I'm like, how am I going to even explain this? It sounds trivial. It sounds like it's not a big deal. It sounds like, people are just being human beings. But it's how many times does the message need to be reiterated? Still to this very day, okay? I shouldn't even laugh because it's serious, but it is, in a very innocent sense, just a little bit funny, okay? And it lists here. It lists, if you want to go into chapter 10, it lists everybody in the lines of the Israelites who were guilty, so to speak, guilty of this. Again, not all of it was terrible and, out of, what do I say? They weren't trying to be rebellious. They weren't trying to, do these things. Sometimes things just happen, you meet somebody, you fall in love, it happens, okay? So, it says here, from among the other Israelites, from the descendants of Zattu, we have Elionai, Eliashib, Bathaniah, Jeremoth, Zabad, and Aziza. Just giving you the short list. There is a longer list. All these had married foreign women, and some of them had children by these wives. So, now getting back to the somberness. It is a little bit sad, right, to be exiled from your community. But just to be clear, there was no harsh punishment, no death or anything like that. They were just exiled. Their property was revoked, which is a painful thing. So, boom, done. This is it. Thank you guys for listening. That was a lot to give you on this day, but hopefully this is clear about why the Bible says certain things and people don't do them, and then certain things happen. Again, it's not really to control, it's just to keep you close. We want to keep you close with the Lord, with God, okay, and just keep you sane and focused versus confused, all right, or anxiety or depression, whatever is going on, right? We lift that through understanding and through peace, and we want to remain that way. So again, big drama. It's kind of a lot, but I appreciate you guys. That's the end of Ezra. We're going to see what happens after this. I don't know what happens after this, but have a good rest of your day. God bless you.